We're on Daf Mem Beis Amid Beis. We're still continuing with the Machlekes Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. We're 4 lines from the top. So Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan had a disagreement about when a Ovid Kechavim has a getchka, an Avoda Zara, and it gets destroyed on its own, or gets damaged on its own, broken up. Is it batal or not? Reish Lakish says it is, Rabbi Yochanan says it's not. So Gemara wants to bring a raya. So Gemara now is asking a kasha from Reish Lakish to Rabbi Yochanan. He's asking, how can you say that something that's mevutal on its own is not batal? Because we see from a Brisa, Mishnah, I think it's a Mishnah, Kansha b'roisha ilan shel hekdesh. If you have a nest on top of a tree, if it shall hekdesh, meaning we're not talking now. The first seer of this Tana is not talking about Avodah Zarah. It's talking about its hekdesh. It was given to the Beis Hamikdash. L'Rabbi Yochanan, I'm sorry. You can't have hana from it, that which means midrabanan, v'loy mayalin, but it's not asa midaraisa. You find, I was arguing with my brother about this. We're learning kachim. This is a very common formulation. We've had it in the past few blot also, where the Torah says that something that's hektish or possibly hektish, we say about it loy nenin, that you can't have enough from it midrabanan. V'loy mayalin, it's not considered midaraisa to be hektish, that you're going to be mechuyev in milo. So that's the din. If there's a nest on top of a Elon of Asherah, Elon of Avodah Zara, you can't be nan from it, but you also are not over in Me'ilah. I'm sorry, it's not Barosh Asherah, Barosh Elon of Hekdesh, right? But the second case of the Mishnah is Barosh Shel Asherah, if it's on top of not a tree of Hekdesh, but rather a tree of that's used for Avodah Zara, Yat is Bekana. You could use a stick and knock it down and benefit. So l'chayra, why would we say? So the Gemara kasal kadaitach, I would think going to shavra mimenu eitz and v'kin. So we're talking about where the nest is made out of twigs that came from that tree. Uktani yatas behem bekana, which said even though these twigs came from an avodah zarah tree, since they left the tree, they were taken off by the bird. So the owner, who's the Ovid Kechavim, was batal memela, because, like we said, this is Reish Lakish Shishita. That's something that is separated from the Avodah Zara. It becomes batal automatically. The owner is considered to have acceded to the bittul. So this is a raya to Reish Lakish connected Rabbi Yochanan. So Gemara no. We're not talking about where the bird created the nest with the twigs from that tree. It came from other trees. We don't assume it came from that tree. And I'll prove it to you. We say legabe hekdesh, you can't be nana and you can't be mailit. That's why there's no mila. Because it came from another tree. This nest is not hekdesh. There's no bittul of hekdesh when it was broken off from a tree of hekdesh. So how could it ever become mutter? It should remain mila hakadishi. It's hekdesh. So that's a raya that the twigs must have come from a different tree. Zok Gemara, Midiira, is that a raya? That's your raya that we're talking about twigs from a different tree for this nest. Over here we're talking about it came from the tree, but it's not twigs it's not branches or twigs on the tree that was made into an avodah zarah. The tree was made into avodah zarah, and the tree kept on growing, and now the bird took that additional growth that arose, that it accumulated after the time that the tree was dedicated to Avodah Zarah. Because Savar Ein Mi'ila B'Gedulin. We are going according to the Manda Amar, who says such Gedulin, such that which is grown after the tree was made into hektish, does not itself become hektish. So therefore we don't have a raya. We don't have a raya that the Mishnah is talking about dafka where the twigs came from somewhere else. It could be the twigs came from this trees. Zakt Gemara v'Rabavo Amar Rabbi Yochanan my yatis. He says Rabbi Yochanan says a different teretz to the original question, right? So we had originally said the teretz that it's talking about twigs that come from another tree, and we said that, but we don't have a raya. We don't have a raya to them in the Mishnah that because that could be talking about gedulim. Rabbi Avoda and Rabbi Yochanan says a different teretz. When it says that you knock off the nest in order to get from the Asherah tree, it means yatas ba'afroichen. You knock off not the nest itself, but the birds that are on it. And birds, we're saying that when we say that you could do it from an Asherah, that it's mutter by an Asherah, it's because you're going up. It's a little bit complicated because we're going to have to understand why is it different between hektish. Hektish, we said, the chacham mesaken, and Asherah, there's no takana. But what we're talking about here is you're talking about knocking down the bird that's in the nest. So a bird, since it could fly, it's not dependent on the tree. So there's no takanas chachamim on that we're worried that you're going to climb on the tree in order to get to the bird. Because the tree is separate from the bird. You'll use the stick. This is a totally separate entity. But however, Amalei Rabbi Yaakov Rabbi Yirmi Batachlifa Azrolach Befreichen Kan V'Kan Mutar. So if we were talking about Efreichen, both the case of the Asherah and the case of the hektish would be mutar. Bebeim Kan V'Kan Asur, and by beya, both of them would be asamit from a tekaz chacham. Since it's dependent on the tree, the chachamim were mesakin on the beim. So now it comes out that we're really talking about two separate cases, right? We're talking about the case of Hagdish has to be talking about the case of where he's taking down the beya, and the case of the Asher is talking about where he's taking down a chick, which is a little strange to read. Doesn't make any indication that we're talking about two separate things. But the way they're understanding, the way Rabbi Yaakov says b'shem Rabbi Yirmi bar Tachlifa, you're gonna have to make that distinction. Amar Ravashi adds on, he just makes a point. You should be aware that a young chick that is also dependent on its mother, so they're also essentially dependent on the tree, they're going to have the same takana that we're worried about, that it's dependent on the tree, and therefore the chamum misakna. Okay. Zok the Mishnah. Hamoitzi kelim. Someone who finds kalim, he finds vessels. Valeim tzuras chama, tzuras levana, tzuras darken, and it has on it the tzura of the sun, the tzura of the moon, a picture, a figure of the sun, the moon, or the darken, which is like some kind of serpent. Yelicham liyam hamelach. You should throw it into the sea, where it's not going to be, it's asur b'hana, and therefore you have to dispose of it in a way that it doesn't provide any benefit. He says it depends what kind of kli it is. if it's a lowly kli, if you find it on like a plastic container, so the person is probably not using it for avodah zarah. You know, in that case, it's mutter. But if it's on a mechubadik kli, then it's us. Zok the Gemara.
Shouldn't say that a dracon is probably dragon.
I know, but you know, I don't know. I
Because
don't know.
in Russian, the dracon is a dragon.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like dragon even in English as well.
right. But in Russian, it's bediuk.
Yeah. But the problem is, I think our picture of what a dragon is has changed. Like we see these fictionalized versions of dragons, but I think when they talk about a dragon, a dracon, or a dragon from a few thousand years ago, they were talking, or 1,500 years ago, they were talking about they're like a large snake, a type of
Right,
serpent.
right.
Yeah. Zok the Gemara. Listen, we all. I remember watching when I was a kid. I was probably 6 years old. Watching a cartoon version of Lord of the Rings. So like we can't escape our the what we see. We get in our minds a picture. But you know, I was an unusual kid. After I saw that, I don't know, it was by my grandmother or something. Then I had to go. I told my parents I wanted the books, so they came back with these, 3,000 page tome, and I read it all in about a week. Sagt die Gemara, Lemember dahan lahani hu depalchi lahu lemidi achrini loi. Are we saying that these things that we mentioned, the sun, the moon, and the dragon, that's on a kli, that's what Avdei Kechavim worship, but other things not. V'ramini. We ask, we have a brisa. Hashoichet l'shum yamim l'shum naharos. If someone shechts an animal, and he has in mind that it should be as a serving for the oceans or for the rivers, l'shum midbar for the desert, l'shum chama for the sun, l'shum levana for the moon, l'shum kechavim for the stars, and mazalas the constellations, l'shum michal sar hagadol for the greatest of the heavenly entities, l'shum shilshul katan or for the smallest worm. Hare eluz divchei mesim. All these are considered a carbon that was brought for avodah zarah and becomes asur. So we see that Avdei Kechavim worship everything from a worm to the greatest celestial beings. Amar Abaya, miflechol the mishkachi palchi. Anything you can find, they will worship. Meitzer umafalchi, hani tlash l'chashiv yitzayel hu palchi lahu. L'midi achrini l'noi bi alma avdi lahu. To assume that something that was created, that it was created specifically for worship, that you don't say. These things that are very commonly worshipped, those are, if you find it, you assume that it was created for worship and it was worship. But you don't assume everything. Most things are just made for practical purpose to decorate a house. Most decorations or most aesthetically appealing things are made for decorations. And this Gemara, like it still bothers me because it's like saying almost too much. On the one hand, first of all, the first case, we said it was someone was shechted something for that purpose. So it's not saying anything about what's likely. It's saying we saw a person who was ovid one of these things. So we had this Gemara back. I don't remember where it was, but where we treat avodah zarah differently if it's being done in the manner which we bring karbanos. So we can make certain assumptions that's what that Gemara is talking about. I don't see the relevance to this question of whether. So we bring a raya so we say that they whatever they find they'll worship. Yeah, of course. I mean, a guy can worship whatever he wants. Anyway, I just found this a little. It seems like it could have been a lot simpler. And we're saying that these things are likely to be nevad, but when we see that they're ovid something, that they were ovid it. Anyway, Zok Gemara Vayt. Rav Sheshes, I'm sorry. Mankit Rav Sheshes Choymrei Masnaisa, V'tani. There's a different formulation I hadn't seen before. Rashi says, like 4 lines up in the narrow lines from the bottom. Mankit chaymri malaket mishnayos hachamuras. He gathered all the difficult mishnayos l'tartzan in order to explain them. In order that everyone should know these are the tough ones that you have to pay attention to. So we already have a introduction to this brisa. What's the brisa? Kol hamazalos, the Gemara, kol hamazalos mutarin chutz mimazal chama ulavana. All heavenly bodies are mutter. We're not saying exactly what it's mutter for. The Gemara is going to explain, except for that of the sun and the moon. V'chol ha-pritzufin, all faces mutarin chutz mipirtzuf adam, except for the face of a person. V'chol ha-tzuros mutaris. Mutsuris is some of the Rishonim explain, it means not a typical, not a person or a regular animal. It means like something like the drakoin or a nachash or a dag. These are like specific tsuris that are often made, or pictures or figures. So all those are mutter chutz mitzuris darken, except for the tsura of the darken. Amar mar, kol mazos mutarim chutz mimazal chama levan. What is this talking about? So Rav Sheshes wanted to explain this, so he starts explaining. What does it mean? Chutzim mazal levana. Hacha b'mayaskinu. We take out the word hacha. Ilema ba'isa. If we're talking about someone who's making it, iba'isa kol mazal is mishari. Can you make any mazal? Vaksiv loisasan iti loisasan could mus. If the pasuk says, where's the pasuk? Loisasan iti elikei chesef elikei zav. You shouldn't make any of these things. The Baisham gives an instruction. You should not create any kind of figure that replicates that which is in the heavens. So any kind of any kind of astronomical body is also to make a depiction of. Elapshita b'maitza. Elamai, we're talking about where you find it. It's very similar to our Mishnah, which you say you have to throw it out. So that's the way the Gemara understands the first statement of this brisa. But so what about the next statement?
But we only have the sun and the moon over here.
I'm sorry.
In the first
that's.
Is this like are we trying to bring a raya to this?
We're showing that if you find these things, you have to assume it was made for Avoda Zara, and therefore it's asa b'hana. The same thing that our Mishnah is saying. The Brisa didn't say much about what we're talking about. It said,
right.
So the question was, what is it referring to? So first we said, is it saying that whether you're allowed to create it in the first place? So that would be all mazalas, not just the lacham and levana. So Gemara says, no, it's not talking about that. It's talking about the specific question of when you find one, do you have to assume it was made for Avodah Zara? It was used for Avodah Zara. And we say, so that's only, from our Mishnah, we see that's only the cham and the levana. The darkein is in a different category. It's not
not a mazala.
It's not mazala, so we're not concerned with that yet. It's gonna come back in the last part of the brisa, right? So, in fact, the Mara Iba Maitza, if we're talking about finding something and determining whether it was used for Avodah Zara, so this pasuk that says that you cannot make a depiction of the mazalas of all the mazalas is a totally separate thing from Avodah Zara. It's a gzeres hakasa that you're not allowed to do it, not necessarily to do with being over it. In fact, the Mara Iba Maitza, we're talking about the din of Avodah Zara. You can make any kind of parts of any picture except for the parts of Adam. Even if we're talking about finding parts of Adam, do you assume when you find a picture of an Adam that it's also because it was nevad? These three things, if you find them, you have to throw in the Yamel. So it's darken in pits of Adam light. But we don't assume by a pits of Adam that it's for sure Avodah Zara. We had before, we had like the statute, but we said those were standing by the entrance to the city. It was talking about that they used to be Ovid once. That was a very specific circumstance. Just finding a picture, one wouldn't assume so. So how could it? Second case, the Chayra can't be talking about Maitza, Elapshita Ba'isa. It's talking about creating a picture. Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua. Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua holds that you're not allowed to make a picture of an Adam. He dashens from a pasuk that's also usher to make.
Meaning stammers are not even for Avodah Zara.
Right. It's yeah.
You can't do a painting or a drawing of a person.
Right, just like we said about the mazalas, that was also it wasn't avodah zara. It's just something that's we're going to say it's also included in that pasuk of lesas and ite elikei chasav el chayzav. The Gemara is going to say that it's oisi. The Rebbe Shalom is referring to himself. He has a tzura. The Rebbe Shalom is considered to have a tzura like that of an adam. He created us in his image. So a tzura of an adam is like a tzura of the Rebbe Shalom, which is awesome. So that will be the svara behind it. First, that Gemara. So we're saying that the first case is talking about Maitza. The second case of the Bryce is talking about Oisa. Oisa emasei v'kol atzuris mutaris chutz mitzuris darken. V'ba Oisa atzuris darken miyaser. Is there an isser to create the picture of a darken? V'ksilas asin tilakas of a chayzav. Hani in tzuris darken light. That's not included in that isser of creating an image. It's the issue is only the mazalis and possibly an adam according to one shita, but darken is not included. Elapshita b'maitza. So the last case of the darken must be talking about where you find a picture of a darken, and we must assume that was never. It was the kind of thing that was often worshipped. We said it. I'm very sad. We were not quoting the whole thing, but we said Surah darken is awesome. So it comes out the first and the third cases of the Brisa. The sun and the moon and the darkain we're talking about where you find it. In the middle case of an Adam that you can't make a picture, that's talking about not making a picture. It's not talking about finding an Avodah Zara. That's what you have to say. Rav Amma Kula b'maitza. No, he says it's all talking about where you find it. I said, why would you assume if you find a picture of an Adam that it's Aser? Mitzyaser Yehudi. That's going to be Yehuda. Tanya Yehuda Moisef Afdmus Menika Besar Office. He adds, in addition to the things that we said that you're not allowed to, that you have to assume were Nevad, in addition to the sun and the moon and the Dracoin, in addition, a depiction of a woman nursing and a Sar office. We're going to say what that is. Sar office, the Gemara is going to explain who that is referring to. But it's a picture of a person. Zak the Gemara. Menika al Shem Chava. Sheminika kolam kula. Menika is Chava because she provided to the whole world. So if you see a depiction of a woman nursing, that was used for Avodah Zarah. Sar office al Shem Yosef. That's referring to Yosef. Shesaru mafis al kol olam kulei. That he was a lord and he was mafis. He was mephias the whole world. He provided. He was we all know the story of in Bereshis that Yosef during the Yemei Rav would provide everyone what they needed. So he became an Avodah Zarah. We know about this in Chumash, right? The Rashis talk about how Yaakov was worried about being made into an object of reverence, and Yosef, he knew they weren't going to let him out, so he just asked that when they leave Mitzrayim someday they should take him out. So he was revered. The case of Yosef, of a picture of a Lord handing out, is talking about where he has a measure and he's measuring out, because that's the way Yosef provided for the Mitzrayim. Vehi denakta bein v'kamanika. And the case of the woman is also where she's nursing a son. So those are the exceptions. So Rabbi Yehuda says on those that those are also asur. So when we say you find a picture of an Adam, it's referring to those two cases. Tan
So,
Rabban.
so are you allowed to draw a picture stamp of a person? Well, that's if you're drawing.
I know we paskin, I know we do that. We don't. I know that I was brought up that it's not an issue. I think there are Hasidic who are against pictures of having any pictures in the house. I mean, we all have Gedalim pictures. It's not any different drawing or taking a photo. I think it's all the same thing. I don't think we paskin that it's also, but maybe some people are machmer. I don't know where it all lands as far as the psak halacha.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I mean, we all do, right? You have plenty of pictures. So a ton of, and many gedalim I know, and if someone asked to take a picture, if you said they're doing it for parnasa, they were happy to help out. Zaktumar, Ton Rabban, Ezu Tzur is darken. What is this darken? Pirshim Shimil Aza Kol Sheyeshli Tzitzim Bein Prokov. Anything that has protrusions coming out of its vertebrae and its back. Machli Rabasi Bein Pirkei Tzavar. Rabasi showed between the vertebrae on his neck. You got something sticking out, which does look a little bit like a drag, right? Like the rooster's comb, whatever it is, something sticking out the back of its neck. Amar Rav Chama Rav Chanina, halacha of Shimon Elazar. Halacha is taka like that it has to have these things sticking out of its neck. Amar Rabbi Bachan, Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Pam achza yisi mahalach achar Rabbi Elazar hakafa beribi b'derech. I was going after Rabbi Elazar hakafa beribi on the way. Umatzu sham tabas. I found a ring. V'alet tzuris darken. It had a picture of a darken. Umatzu ayvit kechavim katan. He didn't make use of the Ovid Kechavim cotton. Matzah Ovid Kechavim Gadol, but he found an older one. Va'amalei Badla. He asked the Avodas Kechavim. He didn't want to pick it up because once a Jew picks it up, it can't become bottle. But he asked the guy to please be mevatel it. I don't know, means scratch it or just say I'm being mevatel it. I don't want it to be used for Avodah Zara anymore. V'lei Batla, and he wouldn't do so. Sitra you Batla. So he hit him over the head, and he said, "You gotta do it." And he forced the Ovid Kechavim to do it. Shema mina tlas. We see from this three things. Shema mina Ovid Kechavim mevatel Ovid Kechavim shaloi v'shel chaveri. You see that he could tell the Ovid Kechavim to be mevatel the ring, even though it's not his, it's lying on the ground. Shema mina yedeh betiv shel Ovid Kechavim mishamsha mevatel v'sheni yedeh betiv Ovid Kechavim mishamsha ein mevatel. You see, he rejected using a cotton. He only wanted to use a gadol. Has to be someone who understands what the Avodah Zara is. A cotton has no das, so he's not capable of being mevatel since he doesn't have any appreciation. You see that you could force a Ovid Kechavim to be mevatel, which is, I was wondering, how could you do such a thing? What does that mean? The bittul is wishing to make something not have importance. So maybe there's a pintel guy. A guy is also required to not be Ovid Avodas Kechavim. So when you smack him over the head and you remind him that there's a Rabbeinu Shalom, and he says, you know what, I'm rejecting my Avodah Zara, the Pintala guy is really agreeing. I don't know. That's my speculation, but I think it's a legitimate question how you could force someone to be mevatel something, which is a state of mind. Begadav bar of Chanina. The Leslie the Belaza Kafa Baribi Hadisnan Amatzal min Arim min Adoy min Anam min Agayis min Anar Mizuta Shal Yam Shalusha Shal Nar. Some who saved from a lion or a bear or from a leopard or from the marauding troops or from the river or from the ocean, overflowing ocean or a river that overflows its banks. If he finds in a large public place, or any place that the rabbin treads on it, all these things belong to him because the Bailim are miyayish from it. So if you find a ring, why was it necessary to get an extra bittel, to find a gadol and force him to be mevatel? Why don't we say the owner was a mevatel since he gave up on it? He doesn't intend to use it as an avodah zarah anymore. because he's not getting it back. Amrabai and Nehidimi Nami Yash Misura Mimi Yash. Who says that's not a bittel. Yish is a separate thing from bittel. He's miyayish. He doesn't think he's going to get it back, but he still thinks of it as an avodah zara. If a guy finds that he's going to also be ovid it, the guy is not such a lamdan. The guy who lost it, he'll say he doesn't know that a yid is not allowed to be nana, so he'll think he'll find it and he'll sell it to a guy who will continue to be ovid it. So therefore, that's not a bittul. As far as he knows, it's still staying in its usage as an avodah zarah. Now let's learn a little bit more. Tanasam. The Musuris Lavanas Hoyler Gamliya Baliasai Betabla Bekaisel Shabahan Maras Hadjaitis Bemlin Kazarisim by Kazarisim. He had these pictures or figures of the moon, the different aspects of the moon, when he would be checking the Adim who were coming for Kiddush HaChaydish, he would have them look at it and say, did you see like this? Or Mishari is that allowed, which we brought from the Brisa, right? That there's a specific Isser, Xeris HaKasav, that one cannot make a picture of the Cham and the Levana. Abaye first wants to say the Torah only asks those things that you can make a accurate depiction. When you make a picture of the moon, obviously it's not a full-sized picture. It's not an accurate picture. Just a round shape or a crescent shape. But it's not an actual picture. Because the Tanya Liyasa Adam bias Tavnas Heichel. Person should make a house that's the shape of the Heichel, Sadra Tavnas Ulam, or a outside area that's similar to the Ulam. Chatzar Tavnas Azara, the Chatzar the Tavnas of the Azara. These are all parts of the Beis Hamikdash. Shulchan Tavnas Shulchan, a Shulchan that's the same shape of the Shulchan, the Beis Hamikdash. Menorah Tavnas Menorah, the shape of the Menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. Avalu Oisa Shel Heve Shel Vav Shel Ches. He can make a menorah with 5, 6, or 8 branches. You can't make a one with 7 branches, which is the same as the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. Even if he doesn't make it out of gold, he makes it out of other metals. The gold was not liyikuva. You can make the metal out of other things. Yehuda says you couldn't even make out of wood. Not just out of any metal, you can't even make of wood. Because in the Beis Chashmonai they were very poor when they kicked out the Yevonim. All they had was a menorah made out of wood. Amaloi Misham Raya, that wasn't really wood. It just looked like wood. It was metal poles, and they covered it with tin. Heshiru Asam Shel Kesef, when they got more money, they made it out of silver. Chazar Vishiru Asam Shel Zav, when they got more money, they made it out of gold. V'shamshin. So Zoktumar. So in any case, these tin covered menorahs looked like they were made out of wood, but they really weren't wood. So that's why that's why it wasn't really. You really can't make out of wood. I'm saying so. Therefore, you could make a menorah with 8 branches out of wood because that's not what was actually used. It had to be metal, but any kind of metal is also. So, in any case, we see from all this that the only things that it's usher are things that are precise copies, but not the Shemin and the Shemesh and Levana. Can you make something that is not, that you can't make the exact copy of Atanya? You can't make from those who the different celestial beings. Those certainly you can't. We don't know exactly what those look like, but we're making an approximation. So how, and the Levana is also considered from a celestial being of some sort that it's the chayra that should be included. Amar Abaya le'asher Torah b'numus dalid panim bahadi adadi. The Torah only answered when it says that you can't make what is it called, the dumutz It means only if you do the 4 arba panim zakrashi pnei sharva adam ba'ari v'nesher. There's a certain type of what are they? I know there's a word for this. I forgot what it's called. But these four animals together, of an ox, a person, a lion, and an eagle, and you put it together and make it into one animal. So that's a Dugmas Chayes HaKodesh. That's what the pasuk is referring to, but it's not referring to any celestial being. So why is it also to do a single person's face? Right? We said in the Bryce. So the way we understood it was that a face is itself is also.
Only referring to that one mandama, right? You're talking about. Rifuna.
Right, correct. In fact, the Gemara Lama Tanya calls it Mutar and Chutz mi parts of Adam. Yeah, so this is an Abaya, right? Rava had come up with a different text that it's also a Maitza. So the Gemara, Rav Yehuda Breid of Yeshua, we picked the Yeshua Shmieli, Leisas and Iti, Leisas and Oisi, Avoshar Shmash and Shari. It's like we said before, a person is specifically Aser because it's similar to the Rabbeinu Shloim, B'Tselem Elikim, Asa Oisam. So therefore that's a separate thing. Besides those things that are the celestial beings, and Adam is Aser for this specific reasons. Okay, just give me one moment. If Shashlosh Mishari Vatanya, Lesas and Iti, Lesas can Shamshi, Shashal Fani Ben Maram, Kunefanim, Esrafim, Vachais, Akoidish, Malachi Asharis. Gemara gives this Brisa gives a bunch of examples of other celestial beings. So why isn't it's not just this thing with 4 faces on it? So why don't we include the Levana as well? How could Rebbe Gamliel make this picture to ask for the Edom? We're only talking about the Bryce is only talking about, it's not talking about the Levana, the actual astronomical whatever you call them, like the bodies, the astronomical bodies. It's talking about the Rabbeinu Shalom's malachim. What about? So you're saying, but the Levana is okay. But Tanya Shabashamayim, the Rabbis Chama Levana Kechavim Mazalois, Mimal, the Rabbis Malachi Yeshari. So this Brisa says Levana specifically you can't make a picture of. That's only talking about to worship them, to be oived them. It's not talking about making a picture. That Brisa is not talking about that question. Okay, we're gonna have to go back because this is gonna go for a while. Okay.
Thank you. Have a
Have a good day.